light of the world. But I have a confession today. I don't feel like light. I do not feel like light today. Have you ever had one of those weeks where, and I think a lot of us might have had one of those weeks this week, where you feel like maybe a dark cloud is just right above your head, following you wherever you go, and you can't seem to find your umbrella? This past week has kind of felt like that for me. Today is the last Sunday in Epiphany, and we've been pondering this question, where is the light? And so today's the last week, and spoiler alert, the scripture from Matthew delivers us the answer. We are the light. This is kind of where we've been headed. So just like the song that we just sang, the light's inside of us. Throughout this series, I've kind of had my eyes set on this passage from Matthew. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. We are light. We are what we have been looking for all along. Praise be to God. Doesn't that sound lovely? Except I don't feel like light today. It's been a long week, and I am tired. Last week, I ran straight from here to the funeral home in Altoona to officiate a memorial service. Now, I never imagined before I became a pastor that I would actually like doing funerals, but I do. I think that a lot of times in life, we go through life wondering if anything we do is having any kind of impact on someone. But when you're walking with a family and you're listening to the stories they tell through their tears, and then you can shape those into a tribute fitting for their loved one and fitting it within the larger story of God's love, that is a time when I always feel like, yeah, this matters. This makes a difference. This is meaningful. So even though I was hesitant about that part of the job when I was first feeling called to ministry, I find it to be one of the most sacred parts of this job. It's emotionally taxing for sure. I wouldn't want to do that every single day, but officiating a memorial service is such a sacred space. I really feel like I am treading on holy ground. So last Sunday, just before the memorial service, Edie sent me a text to ask if she could go ice skating with her friend at the Brenton Skating Plaza downtown. And I said yes. And it was wonderful. Like the night before, she had spent the night at a different friend's house. And I just was filled with such gratitude because she's made such wonderful friends this year. But the next text that I received from Edie was later in the afternoon, and it just said, I fell and I twisted my ankle. We are coming home. That took a turn. So she hobbled in the door with help, and she was hurting, but she was also acting pretty tough. Her ankle was swelling and swelling, but we thought it was probably just a bad sprain, but it was best to go to the ER and just see, get it checked out. No big deal. So we went to the ER, and they did the x-ray, and the doctor came back in the room and said, it's broken. And John and I both looked at him and said, no, that's really not what we came in here to have you tell us. But that's what it was. So then the next day we were at a follow-up appointment at DMOS talking to the orthopedic person, and we were thinking that what we were going to be learning was she going to have a cast or could she stay in this boot? And then the doctor started talking to us about incisions and screws, and we thought, what? That's not what we came here to have you tell us. But he sent us for a CT scan, and it sounded like that she needed to have surgery. So then on Thursday, she had surgery. It was kind of a dark cloud over our heads. But then in the meantime, all the while this is happening, my Uncle Dar, whom I requested prayers for a few weeks ago, passed away. And one of his 3 end-of-life wishes was that I would officiate his funeral. Wow. I mean, somehow that task seemed incredibly different than what I had just done on Sunday. I'm part of the family that is mourning. I would be speaking my words into a sanctuary that was filled with the tears of my grandma who had lost her son, and my dad who had lost his brother, and my cousins who had lost their dad. Well, I said yes. I was honored, but I also felt like this is just too much this week. I felt the dark cloud. So even though this week there was a lot of sunshine, it felt pretty gloomy. I was worried about Edie. I was grieving my uncle. My heart was breaking for my cousins and my grandma and my dad. So even in the sunshine, I found myself asking, wait a minute, where is that light again? I knew the answer that we were supposed to be focusing on this week, but I didn't feel like light. In our reading from Matthew today, this salt of the earth and light of the world comes right after the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek and the poor and those who mourn and those who hunger and thirst. But if we go back just a little bit further than that, just before Jesus begins speaking these words of blessing, at the end of chapter 4, we see that Jesus had been traveling throughout Galilee, teaching in synagogues, announcing the good news of the kingdom, and healing people. And so this good news was getting around, and people were flocking to Jesus. And those people that were gathering around Jesus were people with various diseases, people who were in pain, people who were possessed by demons, people who were epileptic, those who were paralyzed, people that were really in need of help. And Jesus was healing them, and the crowds continued to follow him around the region. So this is the crowd that is hanging around and that is hearing or overhearing these words of blessing. A crowd of afflicted, worn out, disheartened people in need of some good news. Would it be your first instinct to call these people blessed? Do you think that anyone else would have looked out at this group of people and said, "Oh, look, the light of the world"? I've always read these words with such a positive, promising way. I've always thought, you are the light of the world. That sounds so wonderful. But how do you suppose those words may have been experienced in the context? Consider this. Rome and the emperor proclaimed themselves to be the light of the entire world. And then here's Jesus standing in front of this ragtag group of people that are gathered with all kinds of ailments and weaknesses. And Jesus was saying, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. No wonder the empire wasn't fond of this guy. This really had to ruffle some feathers of those in power. We are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. We are. Not we will become, or not we are striving to be. We are. We are the flavor and the sparkle, even when we're broken or angry or mourning or poor in spirit or hungry or thirsty. We are blessed. We are salt. We are light. Even in our ordinariness, in the everyday, even when we don't know it, because we're just going about our regular stuff. Salt and light are essential. They are beneficial. They are life-giving. And they are also really ordinary. And they're things that we can easily take for granted. So I started to look at my week and to think about ways that I had encountered the light. There was Carolyn at the office at DMOS who was on the phone for a very long time on our behalf, trying to get answers from our insurance company in that frustrating journey to make sure that we had the proper authorization before Edie's CT scan. She was visibly frustrated, and she was also diligently doing her job. In that moment, I so appreciated her humility, or her humanity. She was frustrated, and I was frustrated too, and I really appreciated just seeing that. What a frustrating job that she did every day. And then she had this dogged determination and care to get the answers that we needed. Even in her frustration, she laughed with me while she was on hold. Light. At the hospital, before Edie's surgery, she was really nervous. None of us have ever been through this before. And so what she was most nervous about, though, was when they would take her back into the operating room because she had to go by herself. We couldn't go with her. She was not sure how she was going to handle that. She was full of nerves. We were at Methodist West Hospital, and I don't think that they do a lot of surgeries on kids there with Blank downtown. I think most of the peds are there. So, but that was where the surgeon was, and so that's where we had the appointment. I could tell that the nurses who were used to caring for an older demographic were really enjoying caring for a 12-year-old. They were all so kind and gentle. But when the time came for Edie to go back, the nurse who came in to take her was light. She came into the room, and Edie's nerves, you could see, were just rising and rising. And this nurse said to her, "You know what? I had this exact same surgery when I was 13." She said, "And I am perfectly wonderful now. I can run, I can jump, I'm healthy and strong." And then she pulled down her sock and she showed Edie the little incision. And it was nothing. It was easy and good. And that made Edie just relax and feel like, okay, I can do this. Light. Isn't it beautiful how the simple ways that we encounter people in the world can be the presence of God's light for us? I didn't feel particularly like light yesterday, but at my uncle's funeral, I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to be light to people that I dearly love. And I tell you what, there was a heavy dose of Holy Spirit. I can't really take credit for much of any of it, but I made it through. It wasn't easy. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find myself wondering, am I really equipped enough to do these hard things that I am called to do? Do you ever wonder that? Like, can I actually do this? Is what I have to offer enough? I've been wondering if maybe sometimes our light is more visible by other people than it is to us. I thanked Carolyn for her help, and I told her how much I appreciated her. But did she know that just by doing the frustrating job that she did with care and kindness, she was light to me on a really rotten day? She probably just went home and thinking it was another frustrating day at the office. Did Edie's nurse know that her scar, the healing of her literal brokenness, shone the light that put Edie at ease? Probably not, but she was light to Edie, the light that she needed all the same. I imagine Jesus standing and looking out at this crowd of misfits and saying, "You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world." I've been thinking about these words, not merely spoken as an exhortation, like for us to try and help us to become more things, something that we should strive for. Maybe we could be meeker or poorer or mournier. But that's not really what's going on here. It was an expression of identity to people who probably didn't feel blessed. They probably didn't feel like salt or like light. I find myself wondering if perhaps we have access to what we've been looking for all along. We are the light. Fortunately, we are not the source of the light. We let our light shine by reflecting the light of God. And sometimes I don't think we even know it. Have you ever had your watch or your phone in direct sunlight and not realize that you were shining a bright beam across the room? I think it's kind of like that. Sometimes we don't feel like light. But our light is maybe more about the goodness of the source than it is about what's going on inside of us. Blessed are the ones with broken bones and broken hearts, because our blessedness has no qualifications, no stipulations, no requirements. We just are. Blessed are the ones with broken bones and broken hearts. Sometimes that brokenness can be a connection point. Sometimes that brokenness allows space for God's light to shine. I love the lyrics to Leonard Cohen's song Anthem. Ring the bells, that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. I don't feel like light today, and yet I'm light all the same. You might not feel like light either, but you are. So I wonder, how have you noticed light and salt in others this week? Can you think of a time when someone who might have been completely unaware was a light for you when you needed it most? Or perhaps someone has thanked you for being their light in a way that you were not even aware of at the time. Where has the light been for you this week? Welcome to the discussion.